given access to receive messages of clarity, guidance, and love. As channeler, psychotherapist, and author, Noemi Grace has an intimate dialogue with the divine on your behalf. Lisa Berry intuitively listens and expresses the deep questions on people's hearts and elevates the conversation, while Noemi Grace channels divine wisdom and expansive answers to your deepest questions. Each show's themes are related to self-love, self-healing, relationships, and personal struggles, offers tools that will lead to sacred stability and help you find your best solutions. Join us now as we give you access to angels and grace. Ooh, I can feel the access now. Hello, Noemi.
Hello, Lisa. Ooh, I love that. Ooh, access is one of your favorite words, too. So,
and it stood out so much there. And I thought, yes, because the access we are given when we, clarify and get answers and talk about it is access to a better place like this. More understanding, more love, more compassion. And that's the part that I love the most.
Gotta love that. More love, understanding, and compassion. Sounds like a Beatles song or something. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And today's topic is really big. Yes. Go for it, Lisa. Tell us about it.
We titled this one, Don't Give Your Power to the Trigger. Navigate it to neutral instead. And one thing Noemi, I was thinking about how now in our society, our culture, our world, we use the word trigger often, and we even have things like trigger warnings. And like we're very aware that we are triggered, and so much to say like, ooh, wait, I better not say that or do this because that could trigger someone. So it's in our vocabulary. It's very regular. It's very almost day to day. And what we're suggesting, what we would love you to do, and ourselves included, is to not give the power away to the trigger. And I'm going to start with this one because I love that you brought this up when we were discussing it. A trigger is you can't prepare for a trigger. It catches you off guard. And that's a big one to me. And if you could just take that from there, like how a trigger is more of like, oh, I didn't even know that was coming.
Okay. So, that's the thing about the trigger, right? We can prepare in a sense by recognizing what the trigger looks like, recognizing what types of things tend to trigger us. So when we're in the circumstance where we might be triggered, we can be aware. But it really does catch us off guard. Something can come out of nowhere. A thought can trigger all kinds of things. It can trigger a big emotional reaction. It can trigger more thoughts that are distressing. It can trigger us to be impulsive and do something without a whole lot of thought. So anything, so many things can trigger us unexpectedly. But the more that we understand what our just sort of like our trigger profile looks like, it's like these are the things that this is the landscape, this is the layout. Okay, here's the big bombs, here are the little ones, and yet we're still going to get something out of left field because you could be listening to Spotify and a commercial comes on that reminds you of something from 27 years ago, and then you're off. So there's a lot of things that we can't prepare for, but when we recognize, one, what it feels like to be triggered, that we are being triggered, and we know ahead of time what are the types of things that can trigger us, then we start to get some more power back for ourselves, and we don't have to run with the trigger. We can do something before we're off the rails.
Yes, I love all the languaging that you're using. I'm already getting some questions like flowing through my brain here right now. What I'd love to do, I will read the show description to everybody just so you can really sit into this. And I have to share with people, stay tuned, because as we come upon the pre-channel message from Noemi, it's again, I felt like I was in school, home school kind of thing, like just sitting there learning, and it's just beautiful. So yes, let's dive into this. Don't give your power to the trigger. Navigate it to neutral instead. Have you ever experienced a situation where you were caught off guard by something that reminded you of a past trauma? Perhaps you experienced a word, a sound, or a smell, or someone's action that activated your stress response. Then, without rational thought, you simply reacted. When we suddenly lose control over our reactions and find ourselves responding in overly defensive or protective ways to regain the stability of safety, we are witnessing the power of a trigger. Triggers are difficult to anticipate, but they always involve an emotional response that's based in the past, whether we're conscious of it or not, and they can throw us off balance. When they do, we can easily give our power to the trigger, and that leaves us experiencing, feeling like we're walking on eggshells or exhibiting explosive behavior, delivering irrational responses, or shutting down. When we've given our power to the trigger, we become a victim without intending to be. To find our balance, we must stand in present moment neutrality. Navigating a trigger to neutral requires recognizing the personal conflict, stepping back from the past and its fears, and living in the present moment. Oh my gosh. And I have to tell you something funny, Noemi. I was sat down to write the show description, like to get the first draft going. And just before, as I was on my way, I was triggered. And I sat down and I thought, I can't believe that just happened. Like, I'm sitting here and I can't even write these words because I wanted to laugh about it a little bit. But there was a sense of almost embarrassment, like, wow, I'm going to be writing about triggers, and I was just triggered, and I had an explosive, irrational response.
And so bringing some compassion to, sorry, my volume was down low. Bringing compassion to that triggered response. Like, okay, it was a trigger. It was explosive. Oh, stepping back from that, yeah, that could have been a better response, but bringing compassion to yourself and that triggered response. It's like, it's we're growing, we're learning, we're healing, it's all part of the whole, they call it, the divine says, the grist for the mill of transformation. And so that's where we are, gristing.
Yes, we're gristing. I love that. That one of those things that came, so a trigger, the trigger is the thing in the past, and it shows up in our present moment, and then I also like that, can everything from a quick response to, and that's just coming to mind, and it's time to spit it out, is what can the damage be from an untreated trigger? Oh, we lost you.
Oh, well, I think we've all experienced that damage. So I'm going to punt on that one and say we have all experienced that. And then we wind up in damage control. We wind up trying to step back and recollect ourselves and present a different response. And so, depending on the trigger, it could be pretty huge. One thing that I find interesting about triggers and why they happen, and this is, I tell clients this, is that the brain is an associative memory. So it links this with that with the other, so it can get that default response really quick. This is for survival initially, but now it's a shortcut. Exactly. The brain has a lot of shortcuts for the survival of the species. However, some of these shortcuts put us in a place that we don't want to be. And so when the brain links a tone of voice here with something that a mean boss said to you in the past, mean in quotes, okay, this boss that was behaving in a mean manner to you in the past, that trigger, that tone of voice, just being offered by someone who had nothing to do, didn't know anything about that boss, is now generating that response. And sometimes we will respond in a way that we wanted to respond to the mean boss, but we couldn't respond because she was the boss. So, so now we respond, we react.
That's a neat way of looking at that. I never thought about that. It's a shortcut to safety. So
yes,
whichever route you are taking, that shortcut, yes, it's like, blah, 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 safety. That is just so brilliant of our minds to do that. So we want to say thank you very much. However, moving forward, we'd like to offer these things. Yes.
I love that distinction, Lisa, because the shortcut to safety is part of the solution, that the strategy that Divine is offering in the pre-channeled message. It is about a shortcut to safety. It is about being able to go from where you are in that triggered place to the place of safety within you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We just already had it. That's a new witch. I love that. Well, did you want to jump in and read?
Yes, let's segue. Since you segued us and I just jumped on the bandwagon there. I'm just going to grab a swig of water. I really have to say I love this pre-channeled message. I mean, I love them all. I feel so blessed to be able to sit with the divine and listen and write it. But this one, I really enjoyed it a lot.
There's a lot of note-taking here, so everybody grab a pencil, too.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Okay, this is, I gave it a title, The Secret to Mastering the Trigger. Being triggered is one of the most uncomfortable and unpleasant experiences for humans. Yet even when you're triggered, there's a place of comfort, a place of calm and safety within you. You must learn to navigate yourself to that place from wherever you are. This is your ground of being, the safe place of being fully you in full connection with us, your source. The trigger takes you out of this place of being and ushers you painfully into a present moment filled with anxiety, discomfort, and distress. But it also takes you out of your present moment preoccupation with past and future-based thoughts about things that are not here now. The trigger forces you into a new present moment occupation with distressing symptoms. Yet it can awaken you out of the focus of what doesn't serve you. You cannot continue to perseverate on anything when you're triggered. The trigger demands your full presence, and this is the benefit of the trigger, that it ushers you into the present moment. Yet its way of doing so creates great distress for you. To solve the jolting of the trigger that takes you out from a semi-conscious, semi-aware state to an acutely aware state of physical, mental, and emotional distress, you must be able to change one present moment experience for another. Learning to live in the present is one of the goals of human existence, yet it is one of the greatest challenges for you, especially at this time when there's so many distractions, some that bring escape, and others that cause you to be acutely aware of the suffering in your world. The solution to the trigger is not to attempt to create a triggerless life and environment, but to accept the trigger as part of your life for now, to understand and appreciate it as a wake-up call, jolting you out of your semi-automatic way of living, where you're only partially present, only partially conscious of the moment and of the passage of time and the opportunities lost for connection with yourself, others, and us. Deep connection is the solution. When you can replace the painful reality of present moment distress with a new present moment reality of deep connection to source and to yourself, you bring your power back to you and you diffuse the trigger. To do this requires these things: consistent practice, the great discovery of who you are, and a deeper connection, understanding, and experience of the truth of who you are. The more that you're curious and desirous of discovering and living your life as the truth of who you are, the more you equip yourself to handle the trigger. This increased ability to handle the trigger becomes like a pot holder, which enables you to handle the hottest dish without getting burned. If you don't want to be burned by the trigger, you must first recognize the presence of the trigger. The more that you have been present in the moments prior to the trigger, the easier that it is when you recognize the trigger is happening, and you can retreat from the trigger to the safety of that safe place within you. It may seem that the trigger strips you of that power, but you can take your power back in the moment if you both recognize what's happening and you've developed the ability to go within to that sacred place inside you where you cannot be scared because fear does not live there. You must develop this ability daily through increased awareness, which is cultivated in meditation and conscious mindfulness. Practice setting a timer for yourself every so often, and when it goes off, check in with yourself and breathe yourself deeper into you. As you breathe, instruct yourself with a mantra like, "I'm going deeper into me, into the truth of who I am." The more you consistently practice, the more you equip yourself with the ability to go deeper into you, to the still, quiet, safe place, and the more you empower yourself to do this when triggered. Live in awareness of the moment during ordinary moments, and you develop the skills to transform the trigger through presence and stillness. Yes, this can be done no matter how triggered you are. but you must develop the skills and habits to do so outside of the triggered times. And when you do, you will receive another enormous benefit. You will discover your true nature and the truth of who you are as a human being with unique gifts and talents and so much to give to yourself and others. Develop the skill of presence. Dive deep to discover the truth of you, who you are, and learn to recognize and accept the trigger that jolts you into the present moment, and learn to replace that present moment reality with connection to the truth of who you are and connection to us. And you can transport yourself out of the triggered reality to a deepening reality of the growing truth and understanding of who you are. In this way, the trigger becomes a blessing, and you do too. In great love, we are complete. This transmission. Namaste.
I just love how the divine has faith in us to turn that trigger into a blessing. I love that.
And we become a blessing. I always love becoming a blessing. It's such a lovely experience.
Yes, yeah. There's a few things that come up for me, but I know we have 1 minute before commercial. I wanted to share this one. Is about changing one present moment for another.
I love that.
So much power, because you're right. It's not like you're not grasping to past or future. You're just choosing a different, more connected. No, that's not. You're just choosing a different present moment, but it's one where that love resides.
Yes, that's one present moment reality for another. I hadn't considered that benefit of the trigger ever before. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, so you're preoccupied, going through life, kind of partially here, partially there, and thinking thoughts somewhere else. And then somehow, and it could be the thought itself that causes the trigger, or something else happens in your environment, and boom, you're triggered. So you're out of that, they called it that preoccupation with all these thoughts, and that are not based in the present. It jolts you into the present. I thought, wow, yes, when you're triggered, you are in the present. It's not a present you want to be in. It's not, that reality is not the one you want.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's that's fun. Talking about a timeline thing. We're actually eliminating the timeline, but realizing that when we go. Maybe I won't go here yet, because this is going to get confusing, and we're going to go to commercial. So when we come back, yes, back to the triggers and how to navigate them to neutral here on Access to Angels and Grace after the commercials.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
My loves, you know you're here as a soul-led leader to transform this world through the sharing of your passions and gifts. You are here to be in your warrior of light and align your business with your highest self. I'm Rosalind Fong of the show Activate Your Soulgasmic Business. Let's elevate your business to the next expansive level. I invite you to flow into a business soul alignment discovery call with me at rosalindfung.com. That's ROSALYN, fun as in have some fun, FUNG, and let's see how I can best hold space for you to align your highest self magnetize your dream clients, and monetize on your soul mission. I can't wait to connect.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. Noemi and I are having so much fun here going through these things, and that commercial was so perfect. It was just feeling all over the place, because triggers, they throw us off balance, and that's why we're trying to navigate to neutral. When we were talking about, exchanging that one present moment for another, a trigger, though it can be something from it's the past, right, that we're being reminded of, we are responding in the present moment, and that's where, as we navigate through it, that trigger still. Oh, sorry, this is where I want to ask you, Noemi. Is the trigger neutralized, as in it doesn't exist, or it's a trigger, but we're able to respond differently?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand your question. So I'll answer what I think you're asking, but I'm not really sure. Trigger has a lifespan like everything else. So when the trigger starts, it's really big. The divine used that word jolting in the pre-channel message. The response is huge, and it elevates you, and slowly, sometimes quickly, you'll go back down to more your baseline, more neutral, but sometimes it takes a long time. If it's a big trigger, you could be elevated for a long time. So when we react, say we do that explosive reaction, we're still elevated. Our brain chemistry is has been changed by the trigger and the reaction, and so we've got elevated stress hormones and things. So I'm not sure what you were asking, if I answered it or not.
Well, yeah. Well, yes, half of it for sure. Like, so if we're triggered, anybody, and we choose the present moment, we're coming at it now, we've taken a step back, we've looked, we've done some of the healing, we've centered, we've connected with ourselves. Is it that the trigger no longer exists? Can it be just wiped out? Or is it just that we now know how to navigate it? It's not that it's completely ever gone, or that, you're like, no, it's truly, this is neutral. This is a neutral thing for me.
Well, it's both, I mean, we learn to navigate it, and in doing so, we're not with the trigger anymore. And so, for all intents and purposes, at that point, it doesn't exist, but it may exist, but we're not present to it. So,
our frequency isn't tuned into that channel.
Exactly. We've changed the station, so we're not anymore hearing all of the chatter that's associated with that trigger. That's a really great. It's like changing the station, on the radio. It's like we're now in a different frequency. We're experiencing different emotional interactions, different thoughts, by being able to change our present moment reality.
Yes. Okay. I love that. Now, this is fun. I'm hearing a question come through, and to set the stage for this, we're talking about our own triggers. We have triggers. We're reminded, like we said, somebody might have a tone or a smell or a word. What about, there are some of us who think that other people are just, we might accuse somebody and say, wow, you know how to trigger me, you know how to push my buttons, or and there truly seem to be people who say themselves, I like to be trigger for some, like they like to trigger other people.
Yes, they don't like to be triggered, they like to trigger.
Yes.
Again, if there's no place inside you, right? So, when I work with couples, sometimes I hear like, they're always pushing my buttons, and I said, well, imagine if you had no buttons. You know, right? Because we focus on the pusher, the button pusher, but the fact is that we have these buttons that are sticking out. You know, you think about a button, it sticks out. Easy to bump into, easy to push, and that's no excuse for intentionally pushing someone's buttons. But, you know, there's a two-way responsibility there. So, buttons and triggers, there's a nice correlation. We should talk about buttons sometimes. They're pretty interesting.
Yes. And so with the triggers, if I knew that something was going to trigger someone else, you know, maybe they have a fear of dogs, and I was going to bring a dog over, you know, and so I would go, well, no, I don't want to bring the dog over because they have this trigger. Maybe they were attacked or something as a child or an adult, I might say, no, they have to face their triggers, and I'm going to live my life, and they'll have to do theirs. How do we? Because the other people really have to live their lives. So if we have a trigger, we know. I think this was the question that's coming into be channeled is, how can we, knowing that we have triggers, we're like, okay, and then knowing that we have them, but we don't know what they are, we haven't identified them, how can we feel more safe to just walk around and trust that other people aren't really trying to hurt us, they're just doing their own life, and then our triggers are just showing up to help us and be a blessing?
Well, yes, I mean, that awareness of the trigger, we can transform the trigger into a blessing is a huge awareness that I had never considered before. So, so walking around feeling safe, we have to bring our safety with us or lack thereof. So, but there are people that are not safe for us. So we don't want to be blissfully blind. Oh, I'll just walk around and it's really safe to have these buttons sticking way out and I can trust. And but there are some people who delight in pushing them. So that would be the time to wear an outfit where the buttons don't stick out so much, you know, wearing that cloak or shield. So if you could
be
just,
the question, how to get that cloak? How to say, okay, I might not be aware of all my triggers. I know some of them exist. How can I best choose my cloak so that I can be safe while I'm working on these?
And sometimes there is no cloak, right? If you have people that you feel fully safe with, to be fully present with them and remove the cloak, that's vulnerability, that creates intimacy, and that can be scary. So I'm sort of envisioning this question in terms of discernment, how to discern what is the best way to be in the world with the people that we're with, in the circumstances that we're with the jobs and so forth. How do we discern what's best for us, knowing that we have triggers and can be triggered?
Yes. Yeah, for the highest purpose.
Okay, just going to write that down. So interesting use of the word trigger. I just said, I'm writing this down to trigger my memory later, right? Of what gets channeled, because I don't always remember it all, but so an interesting word. So I'm writing it down as a reminder.
And
I have to be careful with that. I'm aware.
Yes,
Go
because
ahead.
triggers they're reminders of something in the past. Aha!
Well, so this is, I guess I'm writing it down so I can associate that associative memory, this with what comes later in the channeled messaging, because I don't remember every word. Okay, so there's discernment, there's present moment, there's safety, there's good stuff. All right.
Good.
Let's take a moment to grab a swig of water. I'm going to go silent and greet the divine and turn it over to them. And I am quite eager myself to hear what they have to say. Hello, Divine. So grateful for your presence with us and to help us in this hot topic of triggers and discernment and safety. And how can we discern how to be in the moment so that we are safe, knowing that we have triggers, knowing that we're working on them, that they haven't been they haven't been transformed into neutral yet. How do we best discern what is best for our safety? And we like this question very much because it is a higher and more elevated question. You are aware that you are, in asking this question, you are aware that you have the triggers, and you are aware that there is work to do, and there's healing and growth that is happening and to be happening. And yet there is the need for discernment. So to not walk around in the world inviting the triggers, to not walk around so open in places where there is not safety. And yes, as Noemi Grace says, you need to bring the safety, but you may do that in a dark alley with barking dogs, and no matter how much safety you bring, it's a pretty unsafe situation. So knowing, discernment is a powerful, powerful tool. We cannot stress this enough. There is always the ability to develop deeper discernment. Discernment is a safety. Discernment is a protective mechanism. When you can discern and you can trust that discernment, when you have developed the ability to discern, to intuit, to understand, to feel, to sense, and you can trust that, now you are better able to protect yourself, to keep yourself in safety. And why we like this question is that it's not blaming anyone else. It is not saying these people are doing things to make me unsafe. These people are pushing my buttons. These people are triggering me. It is, how can I take ownership of myself and my reality, my inner world and my outer world? And how can I best stand in the world, be in the world, operate in the world, and be present and protected? And protection is important, and the greatest protection comes from within. And the ability to be living in that safe, sacred place within you, but also to discern, which comes from within. No one can tell you. People may tell you, but if you discern, people may tell you this is safe, that is not safe. And then if you have the power to discern, you can take that into yourself and sit with your own discernment and say, yes, I am clear that what they're saying is true, or it is not true for me. And so how to develop discernment is a question we get a lot, because it is something that has not been taught, and it is something that you must be able to trust yourself in order to have discernment. So you have all had discernments that you've either listened to or not. You have had intuitions that you've listened to or not. You have had this sense that something bad would happen, or a very uncomfortable sense with a certain person, or a very open sense with another person. The thing is, with discernment, you must listen. If you do not listen, you're all discerning to a certain level. Some are masters, some may be in elementary school of discernment. You can deepen into your discernment by listening, learning to listen within, going deeper than the ego mind. The ego mind has something to say about everything. There is always an answer, and it is very rarely left speechless. It has something to say. And going deeper than that, recognizing when you are in that ego mind place, the place of ego and mind joined together and telling you what to do and telling you how the world operates and what you need to do and all of that. And yes, as we are speaking faster in this, oftentimes the mind is speaking quite fast. It has a lot to tell you. It's do this, do that, no, do that. Oh, this is not good. This is good. Learn to stop and be still and listen in that still place inside of you. Listen. Get deeper than the mind and listen. If you're listening in the mind, it's going to be a chatter. It's going to be a lot of things. And if you believe that is the truth, then you will align yourself with what the ego has told you, and sometimes you will be hurt. Sometimes you will be burned. The potholder does not live there. The potholder to allow you to hold the heat of the triggered moment. So partially developing the ability to discern, and another partially being able, fully developing the ability to discern, and also in addition to that, being able to recognize the safety or unsafety both within you and around you. And this takes This takes practice. This is a practice of mindfulness. As you go through your days, we always encourage you to meditate, and then take that place, that meditative place, that meditative space, and bring that out into your world through practicing mindfulness, being present, observing what's around you without need to react, simply observing. And when you can observe difficulty, when you can observe challenge, when you can observe unsafety, that is a safe place to be, because you will change and you will allow yourself to make the choices that bring you into safety. We are in great love for you every moment of every day. Namaste. Whew.
Ooh,
that was a big one. That was big.
The speed got turned right up.
Yes, well, they're emulating the ego mind.
Yes. And that's what I really love that we sat around is the ego. A question that came up is the ego only triggered, but the soul isn't? And that's where discernment comes in?
Oh, that's a good one. That could be something to channel.
I would like a little more of that, because that was so interesting. They said, I love this, that the ego mind is seldom speechless. That was fun.
Yeah.
And very true. And that's where I'm so glad that we went there, because, when we're thinking about our triggers right now, everybody listening, and they're thinking, okay, yes, I have this trigger, because every time this happens. I would love to invite that person, including myself, to say, oh, wait, if I know that, is that the ego's trigger then? And if I were to listen, I wonder if what we would hear differently.
Oh, good stuff.
Curious.
We'll continue after the commercial.
Beautiful.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Consistently attract soulmate clients, begin showing up on brand, monetizing on your calling. Welcome all spiritual coaches, leaders, healers, light workers, and practitioners to a show that turns you on in your business and amplifies your magnetism. I'm host, catalyst, and spiritual business coach Rosalind Fung, and I'm here to journey with you into the juicy and help you discover where the real gaps are. Ignite your mindset and soul with strategies and systems as each episode takes you to the sweet spot that activates your soulgasmic business by tuning in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain. Join me for your light language activation, and let's magnetize and monetize.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
All right. Well, Noemi, they were on such a roll, I thought I'd ask you to jump right in, because I have the exact question to be channeled.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Okay. Probably didn't swig enough water, but yes, let's hear the question.
Okay. Because I just thought this was so interesting. So the question is how to know if it's the soul's discernment or ego's protection with the story of the trigger. And just to elaborate, yes. Because a lot of times I can say, I know, and I'm like, no, that's my soul discernment saying that's not a safe place or conversation or activity to go, to think, to do. And but then I go, well, wait a second. Or is that my ego saying that it's not safe because I'll look silly, or I'll be upset, or is it truly no? How do we know? Like, how do we know if it's the soul's discernment? There we go.
This is such a great question. I have to say, I love it because firstly, it for a good most of my life, for a good chunk of my life anywhere, I didn't even recognize that I was anything different than my ego. And right, so whatever you're hearing from the ego mind is truth to you then, because that's what you recognize. And so developing an awareness of the soul is something for that you are not your ego, and you really are your soul, and yet you have personality, you're in this incarnation, which is an extension of your soul in a way. There's so much here that I could speak to for hours. But I think what we really want, we're getting at is like, how do we know that the message, what we're receiving, the thought, the message, what appears to be the insight is coming from our soul, from our essence, from the truth of who we are, or is it coming from ego?
Oh, I love that. Is the insight coming from our soul or our ego? There we go. How to know.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. This is a good one. Definitely a good one. Okay. Definitely. Another swig of water, and I can feel the divine presence lighting me up. So, going in, as I say to my husband when I'm going to channel, going in. Okay. Well, Divine, you've heard the question about the ego, the soul, the true self, all of where is it coming from? How do we know? What is the deep truth? What is the ego? It is really here for us in the deepest way. So it's kind of a mishmash of a question, but you know what I'm asking, and you know what Lisa was asking, and you know what all of our hearts are asking. So, so grateful to be here, listening, receiving, sharing. And we are grateful for your presence and for all who listen here, because we are sharing with you tools, and we are sharing perspective that will help you to realign yourself with your truth, with the highest truth of who you are, the true self. And so we often use the phrase, the true self, the truth of who you are. We use this because so many people have ideas of what the soul is, what the ego is, and what is this and what is that. And so there are so many ways that these words have been used, and by different people, and we even say misused, because the understanding is not always completely accurate. And so we are going to speak to the truth of who you are, understanding that it aligns with your soul, and the ego truth is not the truth of who you are. Yet the ego is very active, and you need your ego. We are not dissing the ego. We're not dismissing the ego. We are not depreciating the ego. We are understanding that the ego is necessary to survive in your world and to operate in your world. And yet there is so much more available to you when you can go deeper than the ego, when you can recognize this is ego. There's a deeper place for me. There is more depth here for me. There are more gifts here for me, because there are such gifts in the deep place, in the sacred place within you, in that place of safety and sacred within you, that place of connection between you and us. That place is like a portal that opens you, a portal where you can receive divine blessings, divine gifts, divine wisdom, divine love, divine grace, and you can share yourself with us. It is a two-way exchange. And so we understand that we're not quite speaking to the question, and we will, but we are right now telling you how that there is a deep place inside of you that is connection to all that is a deep connection. Seek it. Seek to find it, to discover it. That is the inner journey of discovery that is the greatest discovery you can ever make in your life. And in that place, truth lives. And in that place, it is the truth of who you are. Discover the truth of who you are. You do that by going deep within, asking for our help, and listening, getting deeper than the ego mind. If there's a lot of chatter, you're not there yet. Go deeper. If it's still and you're hearing nothing, that is a good sign. That is a good thing. You are in this sacred stillness, and that is the place where you can receive something, where you can receive gifts. And so allowing yourself to be in that place. Do not be discouraged by hearing nothing. In that nothingness arises great truth, arises the reality of who you are, deep within you, connected deeply to us. So allow yourself to go there. The more that you know the truth of who you are, the easier it is to discern whether or not you're in your ego. But as you are developing this ability, this willingness, this openness to understand and to know who you are, here are some things that you can look out for. As we said earlier, the ego is rarely silent. The ego has something to say about everything, which is in contrast to that still silent place within you. That place within you, it speaks. It'll give you a sentence. It'll give you a knowing. It'll give you a feeling. It depends on how you perceive in that place. Some of you hear, as Noemi Grace does, you hear sentences. Others hear a word, a deep word. Others have a sense. It is all uniquely how you perceive and how you receive. Learning to be in that place, spending time in that place, you will see the difference is so profound between ego and what you are receiving from that place. That place speaks still, calm, like the smooth surface of a calm lake, and that place will say something, and it doesn't have a whole lot of story attached to it. The ego has a whole lot of story, a whole lot of rationale, a whole lot of explanation for what it's telling you. And the still place has a gem of truth, a kernel of truth for you. And it is calm and it is still. How are you feeling as you are listening to this? If you're agitating and you're getting amped up, you are listening to something that is not the truth of who you are. Even if at the truth of who you are, even in that still calm place, you hear, this is not a safe place for me. You will hear it in stillness. You will hear it in calm. You will know. You will have a feeling that is unshakable and still and calm and profound. And in that place, which feels so different than the ego chatter place, you will know what we are telling you, and you will know what you are receiving, and you will know, and that will empower you then to feel confident, to feel safe, to feel strong as you approach life, as you step forward into life, because you have heard, you have received that kernel of truth, and you can count on it, and you can rely on it. It doesn't change. It doesn't change a story. The ego story may change. What ego tells you one day may be changed from the next day. But this calm, still place will speak the same truth over and over. And it will be a truth that lights you up. With so much more to say, we are grateful for this opportunity and look forward to our next time to be with you. In great presence and love, we are complete. Namaste. Wow.
I love how it had another beautiful ending, and the truth will light you up. Yes. What I really heard, like, so the answer that I beautifully heard, so thank you so much, Noemi, is,
sure.
I wrote here, it's the soul is still. It will be unshakable, still calm and profound feeling. And the soul, it will simply know, and that it will know the truth. Whereas the ego will have a bunch of stories, and the stories might change, but there's a lot of chatter. So when you hear, so that knowing, like, how do we discern if it's from our soul or ego? What I'm hearing is that it's almost like the environment in which you hear it in. If it's got stories and about there and there, me and who, that's the ego. However, when it comes very stillness, profound, calm, unshakable, then that's the soul. I love that.
Yes, and it may be that the true self, that true place within you, that deep sacred place within you, is saying the same thing as ego, but it's saying it so differently. And so the presentation is so differently. And, it really, I think that's something so powerful, because now we don't have to go on individual paces. Is this the true thing? Is this not the true thing? It's like, what is my sense here? Is there a whole lot of chatter? Is there calm? Is there peace and stillness? And I loved how they said, if you're in silence and you're not hearing anything, that's a good thing, because that's the ground, that is the place from which your knowing will spring. That's the place where you're going to receive either words or a feeling or a sense or something, a vision, whatever it is. So that, I have clients saying, you tell me to go in and sit there and be present and be open to my guides, and there's nothing happening. And it's like, yeah, that's good.
That's exactly. Yes. Oh, I'm loving this. I have goosebumps. Oh my goodness. Because we're back to that present moment. And it's the presentation. I love that. The presentation is different. That is absolutely stunning.
And this reminds me of something it took me a long time, and it cost me a lot. I used to feel like when not money wise, but in relationships and stuff, when I used to feel that really emotional charge, that I would feel like, I have to say this. I have to, it's so important. It's I have to tell this person this thing. And it would be such almost like a frenzy to it, but it would be so persistent. And I thought, for sure, this has to be what's really true, because it's so persistent. But it was the ego, and it was so amped up all the time. And I would be revved up, and my heart would be pounding and racing, and I've got to do this, and it wouldn't stop. It would just keep going, and the next morning it would start again. You need to send that email, you need to call, you need to do this. And it took me a long time to realize, that's that presentation is the ego that's all amped up about something. And so, yes, when I feel that, I need to get silent. I need to find a way to get silent, because that's not the truth.
That is so beautiful, and I did love the bringing up about a lake, like a glass lake, because I live on the lake, but also
you live on a lake. That's true.
I can see that difference, and there's so almost like an agitation with it when there's the stories or all the little waves. It's all like, oh, here's a story, there's a story, all these little ripples and waves.
Yes, the agitation. That's so. There's no agitation when it's coming from truth. Is stillness and it's stillness, and it's short. It's a kernel. It's not this long whole thing. It's not the whole ear of corn. It's the kernel.
Yes.
There it is.
And this is a beautiful way of saying this. So we have triggers. Now, triggers are just a blessing. That's something that we're still working on. So here's what I'm hearing is that when your soul knows and saying, and it's discernment, this is not a place for you to go. That is an unsafe place. You will just know. You will know. You don't need a story around it. You don't need other people's approvals of it. You are there to say, yes, a trigger exists, and it's not safe for me to go there, and I'm just going to go a different direction at this moment. But when the ego is making up the stories, it's very agitated, like we said, so that's, now I get it. So the trigger shows up, and we're like, and then so,
and it's, yeah, go ahead.
Or silent, or like, oops, I won't say a thing. I'm not safe. It's still allowed. It's still choppy. It's still pushy. It's still not.
It's emotionally charged. There's an emotional charge there, with that, and so persistence of a message does not mean it's the truth. It's aligning with the truth of who you are. It's the ego really attached to something that it wants you to do.
Ooh, yes, the ego is attached. I think that was said, yes. Oh, there's a story attached to it. Yes. So the ego will always have a story attached and really want a certain outcome and guide you, navigate you to not neutral, navigate you to either attack or protect. So, I feel like there's just so much more here. I know we're ending, but we definitely got a chunk. But there's a big topic.
This is a great topic, and there's so much more. We'll deepen it up next time with some related topic, but it is so much here. It's so juicy. The ego and the true self. The true self. What's the truth? Is it that all agitated? Persistent. The persistent thing that used to be what got me. It's got to be persistent. No, it's that stillness. In the stillness, you hear the message, and it's not screaming at you all the time. So,
well, I hope everybody makes the time to have those still moments. Even if it is just a few breaths. That's very important.
Absolutely, so important. This is how you develop. Back to the pre-channel message.
Yes.
The more that you can create that, the more that you can allow yourself, you create the space for that place and stillness. That gives you the tools, it equips you to be able to change one present moment reality of the trigger to another of being in that sacred, still place inside you.
I love that. I love that. So everybody, please enjoy, practice, and develop the skill of stillness. Thank you, Noemi. This was so beautiful.
Yes, and until next time on the 25th, we will see you again then. Thank you.
See you then.
You're welcome, Lisa, and everyone. Thank you for joining us. Your vibration really adds to this whole experience. Namaste.
Beautiful. Thank you. Namaste.